The great hall of the Vorath Dominion stretched for miles. Thousands of warriors stood in perfect rows, their scaled bodies covered in golden armor. Above them, banners hung from the ceiling, each one showing a conquered world. There were 47 banners now. 47 species had fallen before the might of the Vorath. High Warlord Ketharan walked to his throne. He was massive, even by Vorath standards. His scales were dark, purple, almost black, and his eyes burned like red fire. He had led the Dominion for 300 years. In all that time, he had never lost a single battle. Today, we celebrate, Ketharan said. His voice echoed through the hall. The Kelari have fallen. Their worlds belong to us now. Their people will serve us until they die. The warriors cheered. They slammed their fists against their chests. The sound was like thunder. Ketharan raised his hand, and silence fell. Some say the galaxy is vast. Some say there are species we have not yet met. I say this: let them come. Let them see our power. Every race that has stood against us has been crushed. We are the mightiest force in the universe. Nothing can challenge us. The cheering began again. Ketharan smiled. He believed every word he said. Why would he not? History had proven him right, again and again. Far away, near the edge of known space, something was happening that would change everything. A Vorath scout ship drifted through the darkness. Its commander, a young officer named Drax, was bored. He had been assigned to patrol the Outer Rim, far from any glory or battle. Nothing ever happened out here. Then his sensors detected something strange. What is that? Drax asked his crew. On the screen, they saw ships. But these ships were different from anything in their records. They were small and gray, with simple designs. They moved slowly through space, heading toward a nearby planet. Unknown vessels, one of the crew said. They do not match any species in our database. Drax leaned forward. This was interesting. New species meant new conquests. New conquests meant glory. Follow them, he ordered. And send word to Overseer Malix. The gray ships were human colony vessels. They carried 10,000 people from Earth. Families looking for a new home on a world they called New Haven. They had traveled for months through the emptiness of space. They did not know that anyone was watching them. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, a military escort ship assigned to protect the colony fleet. He was a tall man, with tired eyes and gray hair at his temples. He had served in Earth's Navy for 20 years, but he had never fired a shot in anger. Space had always been peaceful. How long until we reach New Haven? He asked. Lieutenant Amy Garrett checked her console. She was young, with short brown hair and a sharp mind. Captain, the colonists are excited. They have been cooped up in those ships for too long. Morrison nodded. He understood the feeling. Space travel was boring. You spent weeks or months staring at stars, waiting to arrive somewhere. He did not know that in a few hours, everything would change. The Vorath fleet arrived without warning. One moment, the sky was empty. The next moment, 20 warships appeared, each one 10 times larger than the Defiance. They were covered in spikes and weapons. They looked like monsters made of metal. Morrison stared at the screen. His heart was beating fast, but he kept his voice calm. What the hell is that? Unknown ships, Garrett said. Her hands were shaking. They just came out of nowhere. Some kind of faster-than-light technology we have never seen before. A message came through on all frequencies. A face appeared on the screen. It was Overseer Malix, Ketharan's second-in-command. His scales were bright green, and his teeth were like knives. Primitive creatures, Malix said. I am Overseer Malix of the Vorath Dominion. You have entered space that belongs to us. You have two choices. Submit to our rule and serve us as slaves, or die. You have 7 solar cycles to decide. The transmission ended. Morrison stood in silence. Around him, his crew looked terrified. The colony ships behind them held 10,000 innocent people. Families. Children. "Get me a channel to Earth," Morrison said. Now. On Earth, the United Council met in emergency session. Leaders from every nation sat around a massive table, watching the recording of Malix's message. The room was silent when it ended. "We cannot fight them," one leader said. "You saw their ships. They are far more advanced than us. We should negotiate." Negotiate? Admiral Linda Patterson stood up. She was in her 60s, with white hair and steel in her eyes. She had spent her whole life preparing Earth for threats that never came. Until now. "I have studied the data from the Defiance. These Vorath have conquered 47 species. Do you know what happened to those species? They are slaves. They work in mines until they die. Their children are taken from them. Is that what you want for humanity?" The room erupted in argument. Some wanted to fight, others wanted to surrender. In the end, they voted. It was close, but the decision was made. Morrison received the message from Earth. He read it 3 times to make sure he understood. Then he opened a channel to the Vorath fleet. Overseer Malix appeared on the screen, looking amused. "Have you made your decision? Primitive? Will you kneel?" "I. Primitive. This clam, tu antensing." Morrison took a deep breath. Behind him, his crew watched in silence. The colonists on the other ships listened through their radios. 10,000 people waited for his words. "I have a message from the United Earth Council," Morrison said. "Our answer is no." Malix blinked. For a moment, he seemed confused. No species had ever refused before. "No? You would choose death?" "We would choose freedom," Morrison said. "We will not kneel. We will not serve. If you want our world, you will have to take it from us. And we will make you pay for every inch." He cut the transmission. Malix stared at the blank screen. Then he laughed. The sound was cold and cruel. "Foolish creatures," he said to his crew. "They have chosen extinction. Prepare the fleet. We will teach these humans what happens to those who defy the Dominion." On the Defiance, Morrison turned to his crew. They looked scared, but there was something else in their eyes too. Pride. Determination. "You heard the council," Morrison said. "We are not giving up. We are not running away. We are going to fight." Garrett nodded slowly. "They have bigger ships, better weapons, more soldiers." "Yes," Morrison agreed. "But they have never fought humans before. They do not know what we are capable of. They think we are weak because we are small. They think we are primitive because our technology is simple." He smiled grimly. "Let them think that. Let them underestimate us. It will be their mistake." Far away, in his great hall, Ketharan received word of the humans' refusal. He was surprised. Not worried. Just surprised. In 300 years, he had never heard of a species choosing death over submission. "Interesting," he said quietly. "Most interesting." He did not know it yet. But the universe was about to change forever. The humans had made their choice, and the Vorath would soon learn that some prey bites back. The Vorath fleet moved toward New Haven like a swarm of angry insects. 50 warships, each one bristling with weapons that could crack open a planet. Overseer Malix stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crusher of Worlds. He was smiling. This would be easy. This would be fun. "The humans have only 12 ships," his officer reported. "Small vessels. Weak weapons. This battle will last minutes." Malix nodded. "Good. Destroy their military ships first. Then we will take the colonists as slaves. The Dominion always needs more workers for the mines." Captain Jake Morrison watched the Vorath fleet approach on his screen. 12 ships against 50. It was not a fair fight. It was not even close to fair. But Morrison had not survived 20 years in space by fighting fair. "Listen up," he said to his crew. "We cannot beat them in a straight fight. Their ships are bigger, stronger, and faster. So we are not going to fight straight." Lieutenant Amy Garrett looked up from her console. "What do you have in mind, Captain?" Morrison pointed at the asteroid field near New Haven. It was a mess of rocks and debris, some pieces as big as mountains. "We are going to hide in there. Make them come to us. Use the rocks for cover." "That is insane," said Dr. Ryan Cole, the ship's scientist. He was a thin man, with glasses and nervous hands. "Those asteroids are dangerous. One wrong move, and we crash." "Yes," Morrison agreed, "but we know how to fly careful. The Vorath do not. They have never needed to. They always win with brute force. Today, we teach them something new." The human fleet retreated into the asteroid field. The Vorath followed, laughing at the cowardly humans who ran from battle. But their laughter stopped when the first ship exploded. Morrison had ordered his crews to plant mines throughout the asteroid field. Hidden bombs attached to rocks, waiting for any ship that came too close. The first Vorath destroyer hit 3 mines at once. It broke apart in a ball of fire. "What happened?" Malik shouted. "What destroyed that ship?" "Unknown, Overseer. Some kind of explosive device. We did not detect it," Malix growled. "Find them. Kill them all." But finding the humans was not easy. The asteroid field was huge, and the human ships were small. They darted between rocks, appearing for a moment to fire their weapons, then vanishing again. It was like fighting ghosts. Garrett studied her screens carefully. She was looking for something, a weakness she could exploit. The Vorath ships were powerful, but nothing was perfect. Everything had a flaw. "Captain," she said suddenly, "I found something. Their flagship has a shield generator on the lower hull. If we hit it at the right angle, we can overload their shields." Morrison looked at her. "Are you sure?" "60% sure. Those are not great odds." Garrett smiled grimly. "Better than 0. Morrison made his decision. "All ships, focus fire on the flagship. Follow the Defiance. We are going in." The human fleet burst out of the asteroid field like wolves from the forest. The Vorath were surprised. They had expected the humans to keep hiding, keep running. Instead, these crazy creatures were attacking the largest ship in the fleet. The Defiance led the charge. Vorath weapons fired at them, burning through their shields. One human ship exploded, then another. But the rest kept coming, refusing to stop, refusing to turn away. "Fire everything at their shield generator," Morrison ordered. Now, 12 ships fired at once. Missiles, lasers, everything they had. The Vorath shields flickered. Then they failed. The flagship shuddered as human weapons tore into its hull. On the bridge of the Crusher of Worlds, chaos erupted. Consoles exploded. Fires broke out. Overseer Malix was thrown from his feet as the ship rocked from the impacts. "Damage report," he screamed. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12. Shield generator destroyed. Engines failing." Malix could not believe it. His ship, the mightiest vessel in the fleet, was crippled by these primitives, these insects. It was impossible. A final missile struck the bridge. Malix had one moment to feel shock before the explosion took him. The overseer of the Vorath Dominion, who had conquered a dozen worlds, died at the hands of creatures he had dismissed as worthless. The Vorath fleet stopped their attack. They stared at their flagship, burning and broken. Their leader was dead. This had never happened before. In 200 years of conquest, no Vorath commander had ever fallen in battle. But the celebration on the human ships did not last long. The Vorath had lost their leader, but they still had 49 ships. And they were angry now. Very angry. "All vessels, destroy the humans," the new commander ordered. "Destroy everything. Leave nothing alive. The Vorath attacked with fury. Their weapons tore through the asteroid field, shattering rocks the size of cities. Human ships tried to run, tried to hide, but there were too many enemies. One by one, the escort vessels were hunted down and destroyed. Morrison watched his fleet die around him. 8 ships gone, 9, 10. Only the Defiance and one other vessel remained. "Captain, we have to retreat," Garrett said. Her face was pale. Blood ran down her forehead from a cut. "If we stay, we die." Morrison looked at the planet below. New Haven. 10,000 colonists were down there, waiting for rescue that would never come. Families, children, people who had trusted him to keep them safe. "The colonists," he whispered. "We cannot save them," Dr. Cole said quietly. "If we stay, we just add our deaths to theirs. But if we escape, we can warn Earth. We can tell them what is coming." Morrison closed his eyes. It was the hardest decision of his life. But Cole was right. Dead men could not fight back. Dead men could not protect their home. "Set course for Earth," Morrison said. His voice broke as he spoke. Maximum speed. The Defiance and its companion fled into the darkness of space. Behind them, the Vorath landed on New Haven. The colonists were rounded up. Those who survived. They were put in chains and loaded onto transport ships. They would spend the rest of their short lives in Vorath mines, working until their bodies gave out. The Battle of New Haven was over. The humans had lost. They had lost their colony, lost their people, lost almost everything. But they had also done something remarkable. They had killed 11 Vorath warships. They had slain an overseer. They had proven that the Dominion could bleed. When Ketharan received the news, he did not laugh. He did not smile. He sat in silence for a long time, reading the battle reports, again and again. 11 ships, an overseer, against 12 primitive vessels with inferior technology. "How?" he asked quietly. "How did they do this?" Elder Sirath, his oldest advisor, stood nearby. The ancient Vorath had seen many things in his long life. He had watched species rise and fall. He had studied the patterns of war for centuries. "They fought differently," Sirath said. "They did not meet us with honor. They hid. They tricked us. They sacrificed themselves to hurt us." "Cowardice," Ketharan growled. "Perhaps. Or perhaps something else." Sirath paused. "I have been studying their world, their history. These humans have a violent past. They have fought wars among themselves for thousands of years. Wars with weapons that poisoned their own planet. Wars that killed millions of their own kind. So they are savages. They are survivors," Sirath corrected. "They evolved on a harsh world. A world with extreme temperatures, dangerous predators, natural disasters. Everything on their planet tried to kill them, and they conquered it all." He looked at his leader. Ketharan stood up. His eyes burned with anger. "Careful? The Vorath Dominion does not need to be careful. We are the mightiest force in the galaxy. These humans got lucky once. It will not happen again." He made his decision. "I will lead the fleet myself. We will go to their homeworld, this Earth, and we will burn it to ash. Every man, woman, and child will die. We will erase them from existence." Sirath bowed his head. He knew better than to argue. But he also knew, deep in his old bones, that something was wrong. These humans were different. He had seen it in the battle data, in the way they fought, in the way they died. They were not afraid to die. And that made them the most dangerous enemy the Vorath had ever faced. On the Defiance, limping through space toward Earth, Captain Morrison sat alone in his quarters. He stared at a picture of New Haven, taken before the attack. Green fields, blue skies, children playing in the sunshine, All gone now. I will come back, he whispered. I will make them pay for what they did. Every single one of them. He did not know how. He did not know when. But he knew one thing for certain. This war was just beginning. The news spread like fire through dry grass. In slave camps across Vorath space, whispered words passed from mouth to ear. On mining planets where workers died by the thousands, stories were shared in the darkness. In the hidden corners of the Dominion, where hope had died long ago, something new was born. The humans had fought back. The humans had killed a Vorath overseer. The humans had refused to kneel. A young Kelari slave named Thessa heard the story from an old man who had heard it from a guard who had heard it from a ship captain. She did not believe it at first. No one fought the Vorath. No one won against the Vorath. It was impossible. It is true, the old man insisted. They lost the battle, yes, but they took 11 warships with them. 11. And the overseer himself died on his own bridge. Thessa looked at her chains. She had been born in slavery. Her parents had been slaves. Her grandparents had been slaves. She had never known freedom. Never even imagined it. The Vorath were too strong. The Vorath always won. But now, somewhere in the galaxy, there was a species that said no. She held that thought close to her heart. It was small, but it was warm. It was hope. On Earth, there was no time for hope. There was only work. Admiral Linda Patterson stood in the command center, watching screens that showed activity across the planet. Every factory was running day and night. Every shipyard was building new vessels. Every laboratory was researching new weapons. How long do we have? She asked. Her aide checked the reports. Based on the speed of their fleet, the Vorath will reach our outer colonies in 3 months. They will reach Earth in 5 months. 5 months to prepare for an enemy that had conquered 47 species. 5 months to build weapons that could match technology hundreds of years more advanced. It was not enough time. But it was all they had. Dr. Ryan Cole worked in a secret laboratory deep underground. His team had been studying the wreckage of Vorath ships destroyed at New Haven. Every piece was examined. Every wire was analyzed. Every circuit was tested. Their shields are powerful, Cole explained to the gathered scientists. But they have a flaw. They are designed to stop energy weapons. They are not designed to stop solid objects. You mean we should throw rocks at them? Someone asked. Cole smiled. Something like that. If we can develop missiles with special warheads, things that can punch through their shields before exploding, we might have a chance. The scientists worked without sleep. They ate at their desks. They pushed themselves beyond exhaustion, because they knew what would happen if they failed. Across the planet, ordinary people became soldiers. Men and women who had never held a weapon learned to fight. Farmers left their fields. Teachers left their classrooms. Doctors, lawyers, artists, engineers. They all answered the call. Sergeant Danny Vance trained them. He was a big man with kind eyes and gentle hands. But when he taught combat, he was hard as iron. He had to be. These people were going to face an enemy that wanted to enslave them. The Vorath are bigger than us, Vance told his recruits. They are stronger than us. In a fair fight, they would tear us apart. He paused, looking at the rows of nervous faces. So we do not fight fair. We fight dirty. We fight smart. We use every trick, every trap, every weapon we have. We do not give them a clean battle. We give them a nightmare. On the Defiance, now repaired and ready for combat, Captain Morrison received new orders. He was to lead a small fleet to slow the Vorath advance. Not to win, just to buy time. Lieutenant Garrett read the orders over his shoulder. They want us to fight a delaying action. Hit and run. Make them pay for every system they take. Morrison nodded. His face was hard. He had not smiled since New Haven. Good. That is exactly what I want to do. The Vorath fleet moved through human space like a storm. High Warlord Ketharan led them personally, sitting on his throne aboard the Fist of Dominion. the largest warship ever built. Behind him came 500 vessels, enough firepower to burn 100 worlds. They reached the colony of New Boston first. It was a small world, just 50,000 people. The humans had evacuated most of the civilians, but a garrison remained to fight. Surrender and serve, Ketharon broadcast. Or die. The human commander responded with weapons fire. The battle lasted 2 hours. The Vorath won, of course. They took the planet, but 8 more of their ships were damaged. The human defenders had booby-trapped their own city. With clans. Buildings exploded when Vorath soldiers entered them. Bridges collapsed under Vorath vehicles. The humans fought to the last soldier, and when defeat was certain, they destroyed their own power plant rather than let the Vorath use it. Ketharan watched the burning city from orbit. This was the 3rd human colony he had taken. Each one was the same. The humans fought like demons. They never surrendered. They destroyed their own resources rather than leave them for the enemy. Why do they do this? He asked. They know they cannot win. Why do they not surrender and live? Elder Cyroth stood beside him. Because they value freedom more than life. I have studied their history, my lord. They have a saying, give me liberty, or give me death. They mean it. Ketharon snorted. Foolishness, pride, it will not save them. But somewhere deep inside, a small doubt began to grow. On occupied New Haven, something unexpected was happening. The human prisoners were supposed to be broken, obedient, useful. Instead, they were causing problems. Machines broke down mysteriously. Supply shipments went missing. Vorath officers were found dead in their quarters, killed by unknown hands. The humans smiled and bowed and said, yes, master, and all the while they plotted and planned. A woman named Carol Diaz led the resistance. She had been a teacher before the invasion. Now she taught her people different lessons. How to make weapons from mining tools. How to send secret messages. How to kill without being caught. We cannot defeat them here, she told her followers in a hidden meeting. But we can hurt them. We can slow them down. And we can show the other slaves that the Vorath are not gods. They can be killed, just like anyone else. A Kalari slave named Thessa was at that meeting. She listened with wide eyes. She had never heard anyone talk about killing Vorath before. It seemed impossible. It seemed insane. It seemed wonderful. I want to help, she said quietly. Carol looked at her. It is dangerous. You could die. I could also live as a slave until I die of exhaustion in the mines, Thessa replied. At least this way. My death would mean something. Carol nodded slowly. Across Vorath space, similar scenes played out. Humans taught other slaves how to fight. They shared their defiance like a disease, infecting species that had accepted their chains for generations. The Vorath did not notice at first. They were focused on the war. They did not see the fire spreading behind them. On Earth, preparations continued. New ships rolled out of factories every day. New weapons were tested in secret ranges. New soldiers trained until they could fight in their sleep. Admiral Patterson reviewed the latest reports. They had 300 ships now, more than they had ever built before. It was still not enough. The Vorath fleet was larger and stronger, but it was something. We will fight them at Mars, she decided. The asteroid belt gives us cover. We can use the same tactics Morrison used at New Haven. Make them come to us. Make them pay. Her officers nodded. They were afraid, all of them. But they were also determined. This was their home. This was their species. They would not go quietly into the night. Captain Morrison was already at Mars, preparing defenses. His small fleet had been reinforced with new ships and new crews. Lieutenant Garrett had been promoted. Sergeant Vance had been transferred to his command, bringing a battalion of Marines. The Vorath are 1 month away, Garrett reported. 500 ships, the largest fleet ever assembled. Morrison looked at the red planet below him. In a month, This would be a battlefield. In a month, everything would be decided. Then we have 1 month to get ready, he said. Let us make it count. Somewhere in the darkness of space, High Warlord Ketharan stared at the distant star that was Sol. Somewhere around that star was the human homeworld. Somewhere around that star were the creatures who dared to defy him. He would crush them. He would break them. He would make them wish they had never been born. But Elder Cyrath's words echoed in his mind. They value freedom more than life. For the first time in 300 years, Ketharan felt something he did not recognize. He would later realize it was fear. The Vorath fleet entered the Sol system like a plague of metal locusts. 500 warships, spreading across the darkness of space, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. At the center of the formation flew the Fist of Dominion, the flagship of High Warlord Ketharan himself. Ketharan looked at the small blue planet in the distance. Earth, the homeworld of these troublesome creatures. Soon it would be burning rubble, and the human species would be nothing but a memory. He activated the broadcast system. His message would reach every corner of the solar system. Humans, he said, I am High Warlord Ketharan, ruler of the Vorath Dominion. I have conquered 47 species. I have destroyed civilizations older than your entire history. You have caused me problems. You have cost me ships and soldiers. This ends today. Surrender your world, kneel before me, and I will make your deaths quick. On Earth, billions of people watched the broadcast. Fear spread through cities and towns. Children cried. Parents held their families close. This was the enemy that had taken New Haven. This was the monster that had enslaved their brothers and sisters. Admiral Linda Patterson stood in the command center. Her fleet was gathered near Mars, 300 ships facing 500. The odds were terrible. The outcome was uncertain. But she had made her choice long ago. She opened a channel. Her response was broadcast across the solar system, and she made sure the Vorath could hear it too. This is Admiral Patterson of the United Earth Fleet. We have received your message, Ketharan, and we have a response. She nodded to Captain Morrison. He stood on the bridge of the Defiance, surrounded by his crew. Behind him, Lieutenant Garrett worked her console. Sergeant Vance waited with his Marines, ready to board enemy ships if the chance came. Morrison faced the camera. His voice was calm and steady. You want our world? Come and take it. Ketharan watched the human's response. Such defiance. Such foolishness. He would enjoy crushing them. All ships, he ordered. Attack. The Vorath fleet surged forward. 500 vessels, their engines burning bright, their weapons charging. They expected an easy victory. They had always won before. Why would this be different? They found out quickly. The asteroid belt around Mars had been transformed into a death trap. Dr. Ryan Cole and his team had spent months preparing it. Hidden weapons platforms opened fire from behind rocks. Rounder 7, every 5. Rounder 7. Automated missile launchers sent waves of explosives at the Vorath ships. Stealth vessels, invisible to sensors, attacked from the shadows. The first wave of Vorath ships flew into chaos. Explosions lit up the darkness. Ships collided with hidden mines. Weapons came from angles they never expected. What is happening? A Vorath captain screamed as his ship was hit by 3 missiles at once. Where are they shooting from? The human fleet emerged from the asteroid field, darting between rocks like fish in a reef. They did not line up for a traditional battle. They scattered, attacked from all sides, then vanished back into cover. Morrison led the charge. The Defiance was faster now, upgraded with new engines and new weapons. He wove through the asteroids, hunting Vorath ships with cold precision. Target that destroyer, he ordered. Garrett. Find me their weak points. Garrett's hands flew across her console. Shield generator is on the port side. Hit it with the new missiles. Generator. Shield generator. Shield generator. Shield generator is on the port side. Shield generator is on the port side. The new missiles were Cole's invention. Solid warheads that could punch through Vorath shields before exploding inside the ship. They were expensive and difficult to make. But they worked. The Defiance fired. The missiles struck. The Vorath destroyer's shields flickered and died. A second volley tore through its hull, and it exploded in a ball of fire. Across the battlefield, human ships fought with savage desperation. They used tactics the Vorath had never seen. They attacked in groups, focusing their fire on single targets. They used asteroids as weapons, pushing them into the path of enemy ships. They strapped nuclear bombs to damaged vessels and crashed them into Vorath carriers. Ketharon watched in disbelief. His fleet was taking losses. Real losses. Ships were dying by the dozens, torn apart by creatures he had dismissed as insects. "How is this possible?" he roared. "We outnumber them. We have superior technology." Elder Cyrath stood nearby, his ancient face calm. "They are fighting for their home, my lord. They have nowhere to retreat. They will die before they surrender. Then they will die." Ketharon ordered his flagship forward. The Fist of Dominion was massive, larger than any human ship. Its weapons could crack moons. It plowed through the asteroid field, destroying rocks that blocked its path, burning through any human vessel that came too close. Sergeant Danny Vance watched the flagship approach. He had been waiting for this moment. His Marines were loaded into boarding pods, ready to launch. "That is our target," he told his soldiers. A young Marine looked at him with wide eyes. "Sergeant, that ship is huge. We do not have enough men." Vance smiled. It was not a happy smile. "We do not need to capture it, son. We just need to hurt it. We find the engine room, we plant our bombs, and we get out. Simple." "That does not sound simple at all." "No," Vance agreed. "But it is what we are going to do anyway." The boarding pods launched. They were small, hard to detect, designed to avoid defensive fire. Most of them made it through. They slammed into the hull of the Fist of Dominion, cutting through metal, disgorging Marines into the corridors. The Vorath were not prepared for close combat with humans. They were bigger, stronger. But humans were fast and clever and absolutely ruthless. The Marines moved through the ship like ghosts, killing guards, avoiding patrols, making their way toward the engine room. Vance led the way. He had lost half his team getting this far. Good men and women, dead in the corridors of an alien ship. He would mourn them later. Right now, he had a job to do. They reached the engine room. It was massive, filled with machines that hummed with power. Vorath engineers worked at consoles, unaware of the danger. "Plant the charges," Vance ordered. Quickly, his team spread out, placing explosives on critical systems. The engineers noticed too late. They tried to fight back, but Marines cut them down without mercy. The charges were set. The timer started. 5 minutes until detonation. "Everyone out," Vance said. Back to the pods. They ran. Vorath soldiers were everywhere now, alerted to the intruders. Fighting erupted in every corridor. Marines fell, one by one, buying time for their brothers to escape. Vance was the last one. He reached the boarding pod, pushed his remaining soldiers inside, then turned to face the Vorath rushing toward him. "Go," he said. "Get out of here." "Sergeant, no. That is an order." Vance sealed the pod and slammed the launch button. It shot away from the flagship, carrying the survivors to safety. He stood alone in the corridor, facing a dozen Vorath warriors. They towered over him, their weapons raised. Vance smiled. He held up a dead man's switch. "You should have stayed home," he said. He released the switch. The engines of the Fist of Dominion exploded. On the Defiance, Morrison saw the flagship shudder. Fire erupted from its rear section. The great ship listed to one side, its engines dead, its power failing. What happened? Garrett asked. Morrison understood. He had seen the boarding pods launch. He knew what Vance had planned. A hero happened, he said quietly. Ketharon staggered on his bridge. Alarms screamed. Damage reports flooded in. His ship, the mightiest vessel in the Vorath fleet, was crippled. Engines destroyed. Power failing. We cannot maintain position. For the first time in his long life, Ketharon felt true fear. Not for himself, but for his empire. These humans were not like other species. They could not be broken. They could not be conquered. They would fight until the last one of them was dead. He made the hardest decision of his career. All ships, he commanded. Retreat. The Vorath fleet pulled back. They had lost over 300 vessels. Their flagship was barely functional. Their invincible image was shattered forever. The human fleet did not chase them. They were too damaged, too exhausted. But they had won. Against all odds, against an enemy that had never known defeat, they had won. Morrison slumped in his chair. Around him, his crew was crying, laughing, hugging each other. Earth was safe. Humanity would survive. But the cost had been terrible. 2/3 of the human fleet was destroyed. Millions of people had died. Sergeant Vance and his brave Marines were gone. Admiral Patterson's voice came over the radio. It was tired but triumphant. All ships, this is Admiral Patterson. The enemy is retreating. I repeat, the enemy is retreating. We have won the Battle of Seoul. She paused. When she spoke again, her voice cracked with emotion. To everyone who fought today. To everyone who sacrificed everything. Thank you. You have saved our world. You have saved our species. History will never forget what you did here. On Earth, people emerged from shelters. They looked up at the sky, at the distant flashes of light, where the battle had raged. And they wept with joy. They had faced extinction. They had faced an enemy that had crushed dozens of civilizations, and they had won. The silence after battle was deafening. Across the Sol system, wreckage drifted through space. Broken ships, twisted metal, the remains of the greatest battle in human history. 300 Vorath vessels had been destroyed. 200 human ships had died with them. The cost of freedom was written in blood and fire. On Earth, the celebrations lasted for days. People danced in the streets. They sang songs about the heroes who had saved them. They wept for the dead and laughed with joy for the living. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and emerged into the light. But on the Defiance, there was no celebration. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his quarters, staring at a list of names. The dead. So many dead. Friends he had served with for years. Young soldiers who had barely begun their lives. Sergeant Danny Vance, who had given everything so others could live. Lieutenant Amy Garrett found him there. She did not say anything at first. She just sat beside him and let the silence speak. We won, Morrison finally said. His voice was hollow. Why does it feel like we lost? Because winning cost us everything, Garrett replied. But losing would have cost us more. Our families, our children, our future. Vance knew that. They all knew that. Morrison nodded slowly. She was right. The dead had not died for nothing. They had died so humanity could survive. He owed it to them to make that survival mean something. Far away, in the crumbling heart of the Vorath Dominion, different conversations were happening. High Warlord Ketharon sat in his throne room, alone. The great hall, that had once echoed with cheers of victory, was empty now. The banners of conquered worlds still hung from the ceiling, but they felt like lies. How could he call himself a conqueror when primitive creatures had driven him away from their homeworld? Elder Cyreth entered quietly. He was not alone. Behind him came a dozen Vorath commanders, their faces hard with anger. What is this? Ketharan demanded. Sirath bowed his ancient head. Forgiveness, my lord. But the Council has decided. Your leadership has brought shame upon the Dominion. You led our greatest fleet against a minor species, and failed. You cost us 300 ships. You showed the galaxy that we can be beaten. Ketharan rose from his throne. I am the High Warlord. I have ruled for 300 years, and now your rule is over. The commanders moved forward. Ketharan reached for his weapon, but he was old and slow. They were faster. They overwhelmed him, dragging him from his throne. The council has passed judgment, Cirith said. His voice held no pleasure, only sadness. You will be executed for your failures. May your spirit find peace in the void. Ketharan screamed as they dragged him away. He cursed the humans. He cursed his own people. But his curses meant nothing now. The mightiest warlord in Vorath history died in a prison cell, alone and forgotten. Sirath took his place as leader. But he knew the Dominion was dying. The humans had shown the galaxy that the Vorath could be defeated. And now, everywhere, the slaves were rising. On New Haven, Carol Diaz led her resistance fighters in open revolt. They attacked Vorath barracks. They freed prisoners from the mines. They seized weapons and ships and fought for their freedom. Thessa, the young Kelari slave, fought beside them. She had never held a weapon before meeting the humans. Now she was a soldier, fierce and unafraid. The Vorath are retreating, Carol announced to her fighters. They are pulling back to defend their homeworld. We have won. Cheers erupted. Humans and Kelari and a dozen other species embraced, crying with joy. They were free. After years of chains and suffering, they were finally free. Similar scenes played out across the Dominion. The Shoreth rose up on their mining worlds. The Kelari attacked their overseers. The Vendari sabotaged Vorath ships. Species that had been enslaved for generations found their courage and fought back. The Vorath Empire, which had seemed invincible for centuries, crumbled in months. Elder Sirath tried to hold it together, but there were too many fires to put out. Too many enemies. Too many former slaves who remembered every cruelty and demanded justice. On Earth, Admiral Patterson faced a different challenge. With the Vorath weakened, some voices called for revenge. They wanted to attack Vorath space. They wanted to enslave the Vorath as punishment for what they had done to New Haven. They wanted blood. Patterson understood the anger. She felt it herself. But she also knew where that path led. More war. More death, more suffering, an endless cycle of revenge and hatred. She called a meeting of the United Earth Council. Leaders from every nation gathered to hear her speak. We have defeated the Vorath, she said. We could conquer them now. We could make them pay for every life they took, every world they destroyed. But I ask you to consider something else. She paused, looking at the faces around her. The Vorath built an empire on fear and domination. They enslaved species because they could. They conquered because they believed might made right. If we follow their path, we become no better than them. She straightened her shoulders. I propose something different. I propose we build an alliance. Not an empire, but a partnership. The freed species need help rebuilding their worlds. They need protection from what remains of the Vorath. And they need hope for a future where they are not slaves. The council debated for hours. In the end, they voted. It was not unanimous, but the majority agreed. Humanity would not become conquerors. They would become liberators. Captain Morrison, promoted to admiral after the battle, represented humanity at the First Galactic Council. It was held on a space station built in neutral territory. Representatives from a dozen species gathered to discuss the future. Morrison looked around the room. Kelari, Shorath, Vendari. Species he had never heard of 6 months ago. Species that had been enslaved for generations. They looked at him with a mixture of awe and gratitude. We did not fight the Vorath to become rulers of the galaxy, Morrison said. We fought because we believe in freedom. Every species has the right to choose its own destiny. Every people deserves to live without chains. He held out his hand to the Kelleri representative, an older woman named Sira. We offer friendship. We offer alliance. We offer help. Not as masters, but as partners. What do you say? Sira looked at his hand for a long moment. Then, she took it. The Kelleri accept, she said, and we thank the humans for showing us that the mighty can fall. One by one, other representatives stepped forward. They shook hands. They embraced. They wept. A new era was beginning. Not an empire of fear, but an alliance of hope. Lieutenant Garrett, now Captain Garrett, watched the ceremony with Dr. Ryan Cole beside her. Do you think it will last? Cole asked. Peace, I mean. Cooperation. Garrett shrugged. Maybe. Maybe not. But we have to try. We have to believe that the galaxy can be better than it was. Cole nodded. I suppose we do. 1 year later, a memorial was built on New Haven. It stood in the center of the rebuilt colony, a tower of black stone carved with names. The names of those who died in the first attack. The names of the soldiers who fell in the Battle of Saul. The names of resistance fighters who gave their lives for freedom. At the top of the list was Danny Vance. Humans and aliens gathered for the dedication. Families of the fallen. Survivors of slavery. Children born free who would never know what chains felt like. A young Kelleri girl tugged on her mother's sleeve. Why did the humans fight so hard? She asked. They could have surrendered. They could have lived as slaves like we did. Her mother, Thessa, knelt beside her daughter. She thought of Carol Diaz, who had died in the final battle for New Haven. She thought of the humans who had taught her to fight, to hope, to believe. Because that is who they are, Thessa said. They would rather die free than live in chains. And because of them, neither will we. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence. Humans and aliens stood together, honoring the dead, celebrating the living. Admiral Morrison stepped up to the microphone for closing remarks. He was older now, his hair completely gray, his face lined with the weight of command. But his eyes were still sharp. His voice was still strong. The galaxy thought they knew who was mightiest, he said. They thought power came from weapons, and ships, and fear. They were wrong. He looked out at the crowd. Humans, Kelleri, Shoreth, a dozen other species, all standing together. True strength comes from standing up when you are knocked down. It comes from fighting for what you believe in. It comes from refusing to quit, no matter how dark things seem. He smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real. They thought they were the mightiest. Then, the humans entered. And the galaxy was never the same again. The crowd cheered. The sound echoed across New Haven, across the stars, across history itself. A new age had begun. An age of freedom. An age of hope. An age that started because one small species looked at the mightiest empire in the galaxy and said a single word: no.